Thank you all for coming out tonight for Virginia and mine's art opening. It's always a pleasure as an artist, working artist, to have people come out to your show, because as a studio artist, you're in the studio and you're painting and you're doing your work, but it's not really complete until you have somebody else viewing it. I've been painting for 20 years, and I'm known primarily in Tulsa for my paintings. I started dealing with the idea of thought and what happens to thought and where does thought go in my paintings around probably 5 or 6 years ago. I started out with writing, and that changed quickly because I've done poetry in the past, and I found it too conflicting to try. People were trying to actually read my writing, which isn't that great, and trying to understand what I was saying, which really wasn't the point. And my writing would then take off into birds taking flight, with the idea of words and thoughts taking flight. So after some time, I messed around and went into more lyrical abstraction with the writing and getting into a flow, and it not really meaning anything or saying anything. It's not saying anything, but concerned more about how it worked conceptually and artistically in the canvas. You know, where I'm putting it and what I'm doing with it and how it relates to the dark space and the light space. I've done sculpture in the past. It's been a long time. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area, and I worked with a wonderful woman named Joan Danziger, who does large sculpture pieces. And I worked with her out of art school for a while and learned a lot. And haven't really had the opportunity here to do it because I was so wrapped up in my paintings, and then put a proposal into Steve and about doing an installative work, which basically is the idea of taking my thought process and how I think when I'm painting and being able to put it in more of a three-dimensional space, and so people can kind of walk into that and maybe have a brief idea of what I think about it. And it's more symbolic. So the birds are representing flight. I decided to go with tree branches, and then just for the whole natural aspect and the idea of the tree, which I love I love trees and I love taking long walks, and I'm always taking photographs all the time, just for my own inspiration bucket. But the idea of trees having root like thought, and then sometimes taking flight, you know, coming up and out, and taking flight via bird or whatever, and sometimes not. And I think sometimes with our thoughts, which is fine, they stay with us and they never take flight, and that's okay, and some do. Some become great ideas. And I've always talked to people about what is a thought, and where does a thought come from, and where does it originate? And you get the people talk about the brain and the mind and the logical side and then the inspirational side. And so I did some research on that just for my own benefit, and from that I took what I wanted to take artistically and conceptually and create this environment. So what's wonderful about having a space such as this that's a nonprofit, it allows artists to really experiment and push themselves more where they may not necessarily be able to do in a private gallery. Private galleries are wonderful. I have a wonderful gallery here in Tulsa that represents me, but sometimes they don't have the same space to always show everything, because space is money and overhead is huge. So having a space like this, I'm so grateful for. And Steve, originally I just had a small idea of using that wall, and something like that. I was going to do bird cages and crumpled up paper and have something come down in 3 paintings, but I knew that would change because work for me always changes, especially a year and a half later. It's the process of it that it's a fun part. So you have your idea, and then as you're working, you take note, and then you kind of change it as you go and edit out. So then Steve called me back or emailed me and said, well, you know, I decided I want you to have the whole North Gallery and just have fun and make it your playground. Well, that's like every artist's dream for somebody to say, make it your playground, because that's what I do, is play. That's what art is should be fun, and you're creating, and you're having a good time. So you don't always get to do that in the art business world. Having this space then and working in the studio, ideas just kind of started changing. I then thought, oh my gosh, let me go through all my notes and everything on my photographs, and decided to do some trees. I have a great friend that has some property out on Keystone, And it just worked out. There was these great driftwood pieces, huge trees on his property, and I had some other good friends that helped me actually carry these pieces up this huge hill and rocky ledge, and you know, that was crazy. And then this is always in my studio, which is not that large anymore, so I had all this stuff going on like a mad scientist, and you know, nobody knew what I was up to except for my good friend Cherie Asher and my husband and kids, and I kind of try to keep it under wraps for a while because I was still in my thinking mode, and when you're in a thinking mode as an artist, the last thing you want is somebody coming in and giving off their ideas and editing it for you before you've had a chance to really edit. So it was a work in process, which was really fun. Things kind of flowed, and I thought about tumbleweeds and how thoughts tumble as well. So using the tumbleweeds over here, and that was installed this week. So a lot of the installation work, much is done in the studio, and when you get here, there's about 30% that is still done here on the space, which was really the best part for me, because a lot of it is a lot of work. That bird about broke my back because he is heavy, not heavy, but he's wire, he's steel, he's clay, then he's a lot of wrapping and wrapping and wrapping. And he started out in October. And the little birds as well, even though they're smaller, they also required a lot of work because they're tinier, you know, so you're turning wire and doing a bunch of stuff to build them. But getting here was really fun. Kind of stressful some nights because I decided to do lettering on the floor because I saw that in Dubai recently. I was there on a personal trip, and I thought, that's cool, I'll do that. Well, that's hard at 2 a.m., you know, to line up your vinyl lettering. So I don't know, but I do like the way it turned out. But the fun part was, for instance, I have all these dyed cocoons, and the cocoons represent the idea of thought contained. And some of the cocoons on the mobile are open, and it's the idea of thought coming out and taking flight, like with the feathers. So I like the idea of kind of showing art in a more poetic kind of form. In the video, I had done a lot of video stills with my camera over the past several months, and then eventually edited that together with music by Oliver Arnolds, who is he's from Iceland. He's a wonderful musician and composer and writer. And the music that you hear on the background, what turns back on, is his music. Some of my favorite songs of his that kind of have that still sense of mood. I'm trying to think of anything else, but it was fun doing the cocoons or dyed cocoons in the hollow log, which when I had the guys take up the hill, and Cherie was with me, we were like, treat her like a woman that has just broken her leg on the slopes, and she's really big, and you have to carry her gently. So the fact that that log was still together, and then all the pieces I sanded and treated, and then spar varnished. Spar varnish is a varnish that's used on boats, so it's more for exterior work, just in case these were out in the rain. So some of these started in my carport and in my home, the wood pieces last, I don't know, August, I'm not sure what it was, and then they eventually moved to the studio and then to here. But the fun part here was like even putting those cocoons and like setting them up. You know, I love that because you have to think about placement of every little cocoon, not everyone, but you know, and how it works aesthetically. So that was a lot of fun for me, and these cocoons here were a lot of fun. I was not sure when I started them what direction I was going in. So that was really interesting because I thought originally I was going to have them clay with the Sayu clay, which is like a paper pulp clay, and painted and not sure, but after I had done the clay on the birds, I was like, I'm done with this clay stuff. This is a lot of work, and do these really need clay? And what else could they use? And so I started thinking about fiber because I like the idea of, and I've said before, you know, my art gives a place for my thoughts to unravel. So I thought about that unraveling and how that works with weaving and yarn, and when birds are collecting things for nests, you know, they'll collect yarn in different pieces. So I had a great time with the fiber and wrapping these wire cocoons, and it just worked itself out. And sometimes making mistakes, which I did, I was going to do something very different with them, and it just didn't work. So a lot of that self-editing can be a lot of fun, and you can really learn from that, and it makes you think differently. So and here we are in the environment that we're in, and this piece right here is I call it the tree of thought, and I like the idea of when you're doing installation sometimes to have audience participation and community participation. So this deals with the idea of there's a desk set up over here, just thinking a thought. You don't write it down and crumpling it with black origami paper, and then putting it in a tea bag. And I chose tea bags because I love tea, and I like the idea how tea sits in the loose leaves and just kind of ruminates for a while, and your thoughts kind of ruminate for a while, and then it comes up and out. So you're welcome to go over here and do a thought and add to this. Suspending this tree was really fun. My friend Zach Brown came out and helped out, and you just never know. Originally it was down on the ground, and I had thought about suspending but wasn't sure, and talked to Steve and it worked out, and that's about it. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free either now to ask me or come up to me later. And the show, both our shows are up till the 27th, so thank you. Yes?
On the small crows, the shiny part,
Yes.
is that part of the assembly byproduct, or is it team?
I added it.
Sorry,
Here.
it says
She asked on the crows, on the smaller crows, the shiny part around the eyes, that was a secondary thing that I did. Because these are the guardians of thought. So I try to act as these cocoons were universes of thought, you know? And what would protect if every universe had all the thoughts in their universe and the feathers represented it? The idea of protectors of that. So the crows, and I used a crow, I'm glad you recognized the crow because I didn't want to go off too much of a crow, but I love crows, they're so smart. So I ended up with the glue adding on, you know, just kind of trying it out. And I didn't want to put eyes in them, but the glue as the tear stains, because I would think that thoughts, if you have that many, beautiful or ugly, that would be, you know, you'd always have these damp, like, kind of tears, so thank you.
well, Guardian should take things seriously.
Yes, yes. So they were fun. They all have their own personality, so it's fun.
Great, thank you guys. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.